All right, so in this little segment, I am going to talk about topology a little bit. I've done some hand topology here on some text, and I want to talk about the technique that I do. I've also recorded a session of me doing all of it, so watch the actual workflow of going through all of it. But I'm going to sort of give the highlights, and I do suggest if you really want to get better at modeling to just watch the actual flow of me working on this. I'm gonna show it at twice the speed because this whole thing took me a little over an hour to do with the UVs and everything. So just to talk about my technique of how I did this, and let me explain why I'm doing this first. Of course there's like text tools that we could use. Let me show some text here. I'll pull this back a little bit there. Okay, so we have like a text tool, and that's what I did with this. Is I just basically made the text tool like so, and went into here and changed it to the font that I wanted, which is it jumped past it for some reason. Maybe I typed it wrong. This one. So this is the font, and what I did is I just deleted everything but the front face. So I had basically like a template to work off of. Okay, so that's how I'm starting. Now, you might ask, like, why not just use this font? You know, what's wrong with this? There's a lot of, you can get it to work, and sometimes you could like retopologize this and get it to work. I've done stuff like that. But if you want it like really precise, typically you sort of have to hand do it. I don't, unless there's a tool out there that's better than this, but I don't know anything that does like all the fencing and hard surface modeling stuff on a text tool like that. There, like I said, there might be something like that exists, but when you look at this, basically what I did was I went and made this a live surface, and so we'll do that right now. I just make it a live surface, and then I just go to the quad draw tool and I start drawing. Like I'll start putting points down, just clicking point, and that point drops right on top of there. And then like that, I hold shift, and you can make a plane or a face between the 4 points. And then I'll do something like this, and then like I'll come over here, hold control, and then I'll start just dragging these things out. So like here I'm holding tab, and you can just drag a face out. It's acting kind of wonky for some reason. Let's see if I can get this to work right again. Let me try to move these in a little bit. Maybe they're too far out. Hold tab. There we go. Now it's going up, and I'll just pull it up there, and then I can hold control and like drop an edge in here. And there you go. So this is basically like what you're watching there is how I sort of went through this. There's a lot of this type of dropping stuff, and then you can go ahead and just extrude out edges like so, and then move this around on top of this to make it even. Now I don't follow this background piece exactly as far as like the topology that it has, all the points and everything. I go off on my own direction. If you went over here and looked, you could see it's like a little bit different. And then when I make like the first piece, obviously you can see there's like some repeat here. So I basically duplicate that and reuse whatever I can. I even added like, I liked this shape here on the bottom and the top, so I left that in there, even though on this one it's only on the top. Okay, what's important is understanding a couple of topology things, because I'm going to have you make some kind of font so you can learn this. It can get ingrained in your head, because the first step in learning how to do environments is to learn how to model. And back in the old day, we used to be able to get it, like I worked in the game industry, and when I started I was working on the PSP, the Wii, pretty much, yeah, that era. So back then, like, you could do really low poly stuff and get away with it without any problem. But nowadays, you know, there's like way more fidelity can be put into games and game engines, especially if you're on like a higher end platform. So what I like to teach is more of like a kind of sub D film style of modeling first. And then once you learn that, everything else is sort of like easier after that. And you can get high poly models that basically you can bake normals off of and stuff like that. It's harder to learn at first. I'll say that. Like, it's not as easy as just kind of doing basic, low poly modeling. But once you learn it, it's sky's the limit, and you can make models that, like, in 10 years, like this Soul model, it's still going to be good because I can always smooth it more if I need more fidelity, because it's set up to do that. And by smoothing it, what I mean is, if I go ahead and select this and hit 3 on my keyboard, now this kind of smoothing does not go into a game engine per se, like this subdivision surface smoothing, unless you actually like bake it in. Like, you'd have to go up to mesh and say smooth, and then you can actually bake that in. Well, let's just show you that. Smooth. It's gonna go rid of this. So that would be like, that's like a much higher poly, but it's like super smooth. I don't need this level for any of the game stuff that I'm doing at the moment, but that's how you would like bake that stuff in. It's not going to bake in the subdivision surface. I'm just telling you that because I've seen people who just assume that they can bake the subdivision surface in there, or somehow the subdivision surface works in an engine. Maybe one day it will. Maybe, in fact, I know, I mean, there's tessellation factors and stuff that you can put on, but maybe one day they'll have like a really fast algorithm for that. But at the moment, not so much. So as far as I know, everything's rapidly changing, so it could be fixed and could be doing that. Okay, so some of the main components is like, I go over when I'm doing this whole process is like fencing. So I'm gonna go ahead and just show you, like, for instance, fencing is kind of like putting a border. Well, not kind of, it's sort of a border, if you will, so that you can hold your edges when you smooth, so that it doesn't turn into like a ball of mush when you smooth out, and then it makes your stuff so it can look really high fidelity. So I'll go ahead and do something like this. Okay, so this, we want all quad topology, so everything's fine until we get to this triangle here, but if we get to the triangle, we can do something like this. Grab this edge, and I'm going to go ahead and just collapse it. This is the collapse. Something like that, and now there's no problems with this as far as like being all quad. So everything is still all quad, and obviously, like, if you watch the video, I go through a bunch of different techniques to basically lay out this kind of topology. Now this is sort of, when you get to inner corners, you're going to get to stuff where you basically have an edge coming off, and then it will basically, think of this like a sidewalk, right? And you have segments in the sidewalk, and you'll have an edge coming off that's distinguishing where that inner corner is. But when you get to outer corners like this, you'll have something like this, where you'll have, it just ends, and then it turns the corner, but not with an edge in the middle. It's just like a square right there. So this will be very common for when you're working on this stuff. So let me go over this one more time. So if I was gonna go ahead, there's a different ways you could do this. I could just put an edge loop there, and then put an edge loop here, which I already dropped one in over there, so it's kind of pointless. So I'll just do it by hand. We can come here, and then I can just go up to there, and then I can take this edge. We can get rid of that, Control Delete, and then we can take this edge and collapse it. And now we have, you can see like there's that fencing going around, or sidewalking, if you will, like going around the shape of the mesh. And of course, like I said, watch the video so you can see like me adjusting stuff. It's actually important to sort of watch somebody go about it, because you'll notice too that I don't always know exactly what I'm going to do right away. Like sometimes I'll have to try a few different things, and I'll be like, oh, this is the solution. There's always a solution, but it's just a matter of like It's almost like a puzzle that you have to figure out. So, you know, once I have something like this done, you know, and it looks, and it's fairly balanced in topology, like basically like even, like you want equal segments if you can, as much as possible. You want to have, like, as you go through curves and stuff like that, equal segments. When you have all that stuff properly done, then it holds a great shape, as I mentioned with the subdivision surface. So let's go ahead and look at the finished part here. So this is basically pretty much exactly the way I did the other one. Although in the video, if you watch me stepping through it, I didn't use the collapse tool. I just actually did everything with like cuts and moving stuff around. You know, one of the things I did too is the cut tool has a edge flow. Why are you not working? I don't know why it's not letting me turn that on. Let me turn this off. Edge flow, multi-cut. That's weird. I never had that happen before. There we go. Now it's okay. That's strange. Okay, so if like I want to put an edge in here and I have the edge flow on, if you watch this, it will actually sort of change the roundness. Normally if it's not on, you know, if I put an edge in here, it's just gonna put an edge and it doesn't change, it doesn't interpolate the roundness. But if, you know, if I do have that on and set, especially if it's set all the way to 1, it'll actually try to add like some roundness. And I'm trying to find a better example than that. Let me try this right there. You gotta get closer so you can kind of see that when I undo it. See, it interpolates the roundness. Okay, but one of the things I wanted to just like point out is that, you know, when I'm working on something like this, I do have a lot of segments in here, and if you're going for like a lower poly type of game, you're not going to want like all these segments. I'm showing you more of a higher end sort of film topology that you could use, but like if you needed lower poly, you definitely could get rid of like all this superfluous stuff and just keep like the basic shape. But you can use the higher poly to bake normal maps out from and get like good, you know, beveled corners and stuff like that. So that's why I show you, I'm showing you like the higher end stuff first, because like I said, the lower end stuff's easier to do. So rather you learn the hard stuff and then go back to the easier stuff. So basically, once you know you get one section done, you can pretty much get the other section. The trickiest part as far as like all of this is probably right here, and that's because it, you know, this like U shape, how it has this little heel, whatever you call this little heel that comes down and this little indent right here. That is, you know, this is a lot more tricky of a shape than just going around a corner like this, obviously. But when you're learning how to do this kind of topology all in quads and put fencing in and basically how to link stuff up, this kind of example with text is probably the, you know, maybe one of the better ways, just because it's flat. Text has, you know, like this surface is flat, so when you're doing like linking topology up so that it's all basically quads and working that topology out, the easiest way to do it is on a flat surface. If you're on like a rounded surface, which we'll go over later, if you're on stuff like that, it's much more challenging to get like the topology correct and still have everything like quad and linked up. It's just a lot more challenging. Why would you want to have everything quad? Well, it renders better. UVs, you know, it seems like it's not technically easier for UVs, but it's easier to lay out, to like select edge loops and stuff like that. It's easier to add edge loops in if you need more resolution. It's better for like if you want to deform the model. You know, if you're going to go ahead and like, you know, you need to like do some kind of animation on this and deform this model, then if it's all quads like this and it's evenly distributed quads, you can easily, you know, do stuff like this, whereas you couldn't do that if it was like, if you basically just try to use the text tool the way that they give it to you. They even have a deformation like option in the text tool, but it doesn't really work that great. So if you actually need like a really clean, you know, clean text or clean modeling, then you know, you're gonna have to do that kind of stuff by hand at this point. There is, you know, there's tools. Let me show you. There's tools that you can try to get, you know, something close to this in here, like retopologize. Like I can go like that. It says, I'm just gonna go for it. So this sometimes yields some decent results, but it's not really that high poly count right now. 5,000 is like not quite enough. Maybe I made it like 10,000. I think I'd have to, let's see, is this interactive? I think it is. So it's paused right now while it's re-evaluating the mesh. There we go. But you can see, like, yes, you can kind of get something from this, but is it like efficient like this is? And will it, you know, like I said, like if this might work for whatever you're doing, but if it doesn't, and you need something like really precise and really efficient, then you need to know the right way to do it. And that's what I'm trying to teach here is like, how do you do this stuff the right way? I mean, one day, you know, they think the AI will take over everything, and that might be true. Like you might, you know, you might not have to do a whole bunch of modeling like this, but how do you fix it if it doesn't work right? And how do you know whether it's right or not if you've never learned this? So that's like my 2 cents on the whole idea about that, you know, AI is going to do everything for us. It's like, well, how would you even know if it was doing it right? And, you know, if it doesn't work the way you want it, how are you going to fix it if you don't know how to do it? So think about that. That's a important idea. So there will be another video that's connected to this one that shows me working through everything. I do go over all the UVs too. I show how I work out the UVs. In this example, all I did is cut off the front face and the back face, and then the extruded edges that are on the sides, those edges I basically cut them up only if they were really long. So like you can imagine, like like if I only did this at the corners, you know, from here all the way to here, you know, that would be like a really long strip. So instead of doing that, what I did is I cut that into 2 pieces, as you can see here. So there's one, there's the other. So that's basically the UVs, you know, in a nutshell. Just cut the front and back off, and then sort of split up the extruded pieces a little bit so they fit in here easier. You can tell that well, I hope you can tell that doing the work really clean like this allows me to cut these faces off really easily, even though the UV still took like probably like 10-15 minutes or something to cut up, just because there's a lot of stuff. But it was much easier to do than if I had, you know, just like random topology like we just saw from that mesh creator, from the retopologize tool. Yeah, so this is much better, much cleaner, and yeah, this will work really well for doing texturing. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one. Bye.